Okay, time for a new video, and whether you are somebody new to my channel or you are returning to my channel to watch this video, it is greatly appreciated. As always, I'm filming this video in one go, so if I stumble over my words moving forwards, apologies about that, and also apologies if the quality of this video is fairly poor as well, if there's any lag. Anything like that at all, sadly it can't be helped, and hopefully it's not too much of an issue for you. This is yet another Eurovision related video here on my channel, and I am going to be taking a very early look ahead to the 2025 edition of the Eurovision Song Contest today. As always, you're very welcome to let me know your thoughts on anything I discuss in today's video by leaving a comment down below, and as always there are links in the description to my other social media pages, check them out if you so wish. So it has been a little while since I sat down to film a video, and I just want to make it very clear that over the next few months it is absolutely my intention to keep filming videos and putting them up on my channel for you to watch, but they will be more few and far between, and that is simply because there's not really a lot of information to talk about with regards to next year's Swiss staged contest. We're not going to be getting many details about it until much later in the year. Of course, when September comes around, that's when the Eurovision season sort of officially begins, and then we'll be finding out information about national finals and internal selections too. But until then, the videos will be a little bit more sporadic, but I do absolutely intend on filming a fair few over the summer months. I fully expect these videos to not fare terribly well on my channel because not many people are really interested in watching Eurovision related content throughout the summer, and chances are I'll just be talking about older contests. I absolutely want to do that. I've had this series going on my channel now for a good few years, the Look Back series, where I go backwards in time and focus on a specific contest, and I think I'm only up to 1997 or something like that, so I want to start that up again and go further back in time, because I do feel as though I've neglected older contests on my channel, and some of you might be interested in hearing my thoughts on older competitions and hearing about my favourite songs and what have you. And I hope to film other types of content as well to do with Eurovision as and when. I'm just not sure entirely what those videos will entail as of yet. Also, very recently I did reach the 1,000 subscriber mark on my channel. It's taken 7 years or so to reach 4 digits in terms of subscribers. I'm very, very grateful to every one of you. Anybody who's liked my content, shared my content, commented on my content, whatever it is, I'm very, very thankful. I would like to mark this little milestone. I just don't know how. I don't really fancy doing a live video, but I'm open to suggestions. So if you have any ideas as to what I could do to celebrate and mark reaching 1,000 subscribers on this channel, feel free to leave a comment down below or contact me elsewhere, and I may take your ideas into consideration. Anyway, let's now take a look at the 2025 contest. I have some information in front of me to make sure I don't forget anything too important. There's really so little to say here, but I fancied filming this video anyway. We know that it's going to be the 69th edition of the ESC, and it will take place at some point next May, somewhere in Switzerland, and this is of course because Nemo won a few weeks ago in Malmö, Sweden for Switzerland with their song The Code. It will be the third time Switzerland hosts the contest after the inaugural competition in 1956 in Lugano and the 1989 contest in Lausanne. This was after Celine Dion won, of course. Now, it says here that as of right now, 10 nations have said that they will most likely take part in next year's competition. They are, in alphabetical order, Austria, Belgium, Croatia, Denmark, Luxembourg, Malta, Portugal, Serbia, Spain, and Switzerland. I'll go through some of the other countries in just a moment. Now, of course, the big question at this early stage is where in Switzerland will next year's competition take place? Now, usually what happens is a few days after a country wins, several government officials say on social media or somewhere else that they would like their city to put forwards a bid. At some point over the summer, there is then a bidding process in which members of the EBU, representatives of that organisation, along with members of the Swiss Broadcasting Corporation, whatever it's called, they will visit the locations that have put forwards a bid, and they will make sure that these venues and indeed the cities are meeting lots of the criteria and ticking a lot of the right boxes. Then in September, and this has been confirmed by the broadcaster themselves, in September of this year we will find out which city and of course the venue in question. We'll find out the details as to who has come out on top, and people can start planning their trips for next May. Although Switzerland is very expensive, so it will be interesting to see if a lot of Eurovision fans who usually would travel to Eurovision, the hardcore fans I'm thinking about here, it'll be interesting to see if they do travel to Switzerland for next year's event. Now, I'm rambling big time, but that's nothing new. 4 locations in Switzerland so far have said that they may make an official bid. They are Basel, which is towards the northwest, very close to the border of France and Germany, so there's a nice sort of triangular country thing going on there, if you see what I mean. We have Geneva, which is in the southwest, St. Gallen, which is in the northeast, and Zurich, which is towards the north. It's worth saying that the EBU are based in Switzerland themselves, so you would think that this would be a pretty easy competition to organise along with the Swiss broadcaster. But of course, there's so many things up in the air at the moment because Eurovision 2024 was a bit of a shite show at times, and definitely I imagine behind the scenes there's lots of conversations going on between delegations, perhaps even artists, and the EBU, and that's going to be going on for quite some time. I expect statements. I'd be very surprised if we didn't get statements, but I expect statements from the EBU, perhaps over the course of the summer, just clarifying a few things regarding the 2024 competition, especially the atmosphere backstage and what I've read recently, which is several countries were on the verge of pulling out of the grand final just before, I think it was the Friday jury show, don't quote me on that. There was talk of withdrawal, absolutely. So I do expect some more clarification on that moving forwards. So it's a bit of a headache, even though the EBU are working with the Swiss broadcaster in the country where the EBU themselves are based. You'd think it would be fairly easy to put together, but I imagine that because of everything else that's going on at the moment, it could be a little bit long-winded. We'll just have to wait and see. Now, Basel, we don't have much information about them, but the St. Jakobshalle is the likely venue, which was opened in 1976. It has a capacity of 12,400, but we mustn't forget that it will be slightly lower than that for Eurovision because you have the size of the stage and the lighting equipment, and perhaps the green room that is part of the arena floor as well. The St. Jakobshalle has hosted tennis, handball, and curling, along with ice hockey, and a couple of concerts over the years as well. There's a picture of it right there. As for Geneva, now Geneva is probably the front runner at this very early stage because the EBU are based here and the venue is pretty big, a capacity for 15,000 people and 2,000 journalists. It's the Palexpo, which is a convention centre, so it's quite a series of buildings here, and it's right next to the airport. Now, I was saying earlier, to host Eurovision, you need to tick a lot of the right boxes, you need to be meeting a lot of the criteria, and it's more than people realise, it's more than I realise, but I know that a city has to have a certain amount of hotel rooms, it has to have great transport links, it has to have a very suitable arena, not just for fans, but for the press, all of that sort of business, and it also has to have the right ceiling height, all of this stuff. And it does vary ever so slightly year upon year, but mostly it stays pretty much the same. Anyway, the Palexpo is ticking a lot of the right boxes already. It is just over the road from the airport. It opened in 1981. It's been renovated once and expanded 3 times. It has an exhibit hall floor space. What am I trying to say here? Yes, over 100,000 square meters of exhibition space. So plenty of room for members of the press, fans, everybody, what have you. It's hosted tennis. It's also the home of the Geneva International Motor Show, and it's also hosted handball in the past. It does mention here that it is interested in hosting Eurovision 2025. Now, as for St. Gallen, which I don't think for 1 minute is going to come out on top here, the SGKB Halle is the venue in question, and this was put forwards by the head of the Ulmer National Fair, who has put forwards the hall as a potential venue for the contest. However, it says here, the distance from airports and other infrastructure may disadvantage the city. With all due respect, I think St. Gallen haven't got much of a chance whatsoever. But what about Zurich? Now, it's very interesting because over the past few years we've had non-capital cities host the event. It looks as though it could be the case again for 2025. Zurich is the biggest city in Switzerland, I believe, and they've got 2 suitable venues. The Hallenstadion is the likely candidate, so place your bets on this one. It has a capacity of just over 11,000, but it's more than that for concerts, 13,000. This is the second biggest indoor arena in Switzerland, I think. Don't quote me on that. It was the home of one of the leading ice hockey teams in the country, the ZSC Lions, up until 2022. It's quite an old venue. It opened in 1939. It's been renovated once, so maybe the age of this place is not working in its favour, but it has hosted so many events over many, many decades. The Dalai Lama has been there. FIFA have had meetings there. Every major musician you can think of has performed there. The Rolling Stones, David Bowie, ABBA, Bob Marley, Fleetwood Mac, Queen, Phil Collins, Tina Turner, Bon Jovi, Celine Dion, Britney Spears, Shakira, Barbra Streisand, Pink, Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Justin Bieber, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Black Sabbath, and the list goes on and on and on. Many former Eurovision acts as well, it's worth saying. In pictures, it doesn't look that massive, but it has a great capacity. It's in northern Zurich, I believe, so not too far away from the thick of the action, shall we say. I would say that this is in with a very, very strong chance of being the winner of the bidding process, if indeed that venue is put forwards, if indeed Zurich decide to bid in the first place. Apparently we're finding out for sure in June. The other venue, which I don't think is in contention, I don't really know why, it's the Swiss Life Arena, which is located elsewhere in Zurich. It opened in 2022. This is where that ice hockey team now play. It has a capacity of 12,000, so it's new, it's modern, it's ticking the boxes in terms of ceiling height, absolutely, and in terms of capacity. I don't really know why they're not considering this one as well, because it's more modern. I don't know. Anyway, maybe they can't move it because of the ice hockey, although isn't the ice hockey season finished? I don't really know. All I know is that the Hallenstadion is the more likely candidate. Now, you might be thinking, what about some other cities, including the capital city, Bern? Well, the president of Bern's cantonal government, Philipp Müller, has said no thanks, pretty much. He's expressed his reluctance to hosting the competition in the de facto Swiss capital, citing a rise in anti-Semitism in the contest. So Bern, unlikely to bid at all, which is a bit of a shame because they have a very suitable venue, the largest one in the country. On the 15th of May, Biel-Bienne, the hometown of Nemo, declared its interest to be associated and co-host the event, and on May the 17th, Freiburg also stated that they were examining a potential bid to host the event as well. But let's be realistic here. It's Zurich or Geneva, possibly Bern if Bern changes its mind. Otherwise, I'd be looking at Geneva and Zurich. Now, in terms of other countries, there's a few details here regarding certain nations. Albania, they're going to be using FIC once again, and we know that takes place around the Christmas time, so chances are Albania will absolutely be confirming their participation before too long. Bosnia, who haven't taken part since 2016, I don't really know what's happening with them. Their broadcaster is still under sanctions due to debts, but in its broadcasting programme for this year, the Bosnian broadcaster BHRT outlined its plans, including a statement that said it is high time to consider the possibility of returning. It is high time. I absolutely agree, but I don't think it's going to happen. Czechia may withdraw, but a decision will be announced after August. I don't really see why they would withdraw. They weren't that far away from qualifying this year. Keep on trucking, I say. As for Finland, UMK will be back. Germany, the national selection is being handed over to a different broadcaster or different branch of the broadcaster, something like that. Ireland, don't really know what's happening with them. They're going to stick with a national final, I believe, but it might be slightly different. Latvia, there is a petition which was started in February and it's had over 10,000 votes, which means it must be reviewed by the Latvian government, the Latvian parliament. And this is because of the high costs of participation, and participants tend to behave promiscuously. What a load of shite! What shite! Honestly, you are clutching at straws there. Anyway, Latvia may withdraw, which I think is a load of balderdash, because this year they qualified for the first time in ages. The only way is up, dear Latvia. What is this shite about some sort of petition? I just think it's rubbish. As for Lithuania, yes, they're planning on coming back. Montenegro, I think they'll be back, actually. It says here, the broadcaster, they talked about money, and they're thinking about organising a music festival to promote Montenegrin artists and authors. Well, I think they did have somebody lined up for 2023 and then they withdrew. So get them on the phone, I say. Slovenia, I think they're going back to EMA. And Turkey, oh, get ready to chuckle. You might have already seen this. The president of Turkey, who I've never met, so I'm not going to judge the guy, has said that it's good Turkey are continuing to not take part in Eurovision because it is a deliberate attempt to remove gender determination. Yes, the president of Turkey said that. Absolutely. Yet again, more shite spilling forth from a politician's mouth. It happens all the time. I mean, if I was Turkish, I'd be absolutely disgusted with a statement like that. And being a Eurovision fan, I'd be absolutely campaigning to get my country back in. But it doesn't look like it's going to happen, because maybe this guy has some sort of stranglehold on everything. I don't know, let's not talk about politics. But if you're Turkish, feel free to let me know, because I think this is a load of crap, and Turkey should be coming back sooner rather than later. Thank you very much. Now back to normal programming. We have to talk about Kosovo, who are very likely to debut next year as well, but chances are some countries might kick up a bit of a stink about it. They have had their own version of FIC. And the CEO of their broadcaster RTK said, yes, we absolutely want to take part, and they are submitting an application to join the EBU in June, so they can be involved in 2025. Of course, we must remember as well, to take part in Eurovision, it's not just being a member or associate member of the EBU, you have to be part of the UN, I think, part of the Council of Europe, the International Telecommunications Union or something like that. Again, lots of box ticking along the way. Unless you're Australia, things are a little bit more lenient there. But yes, it looks as though Kosovo could be joining the party next year. Slovakia, however, won't be because of budget cuts. What a tremendous shame. Now, I may as well touch on a few other countries while I'm rambling on about this. We have the Faroe Islands, part of Denmark. They have a 5-year plan to gain EBU membership, so good luck. Gibraltar, that's not happening. It's all died down with Kazakhstan, which is a bit of a shame. I suppose they've just thought to themselves, the EBU are never going to accept us, even though we've been in Junior Eurovision, so we may as well throw in the towel. They didn't even broadcast the contest this year, last year, and the year before, I believe. Kosovo, I've spoken about. Lebanon, that's not happening. Liechtenstein, that's not happening anymore. And again, it's all about money. This is one of the big problems with Eurovision now. That Eurovision fans maybe don't know a great deal about. I certainly don't. But in terms of budgets and money and putting together the whole package for Eurovision for your country, that's a lot of time and that's an expensive cost potentially. So I think if we have more countries withdraw, it's not necessarily going to be because they don't like Eurovision anymore. It might be because they just can't afford it. And I don't really know how you rectify something like that. There's also talk of Scotland and Wales here, but I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So let me move on very briefly to the community post that I put up 5 days ago at the time of recording this video you're watching now. And I said, some people have said there needs to be change with Eurovision moving forward. So what needs changing, if anything, in your opinion? So I'm going to rattle through these comments. Put more people on each jury. I agree. 5 people per country is very low. Would it really improve matters if it was a bigger jury? Maybe. I absolutely think the jury should stay. I absolutely think they should be reintroduced for the semi-finals because you need that consistency. If you're going to have them for the final, I think you should have them for the semi-finals as well. 60%, 40% split. A few people online have said this. 60% for the public, 40% for the jury. I'm not against that idea. But I often feel once Eurovision is over and done with for another year and I look at the results, I feel as though the public results are absolutely ridiculous in comparison to the jury results, which can also be absolutely ridiculous. So I don't really know how to feel about that. I don't know. I think there's real disappointment over the past 2 years because it feels as though the juries have decided the winner for us before the public results are even added on top. Sweden last year was so far ahead. Switzerland this year was so far ahead. Maybe that's just because the juries are more clear-cut and they know what they like, and that's why we have a convincing winner. I don't know. Whereas the public are a bit more indecisive. I don't know. Saying that, Finland were the clear public winners last year. I don't really know what point I'm trying to make here, but yes, 60%, 40%, I'm not against it, but I don't see it being introduced. Let's have a year where only the public decide. Which makes me think, why are we wasting our money voting when the public's favourite is blocked by the jury? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if you have it for 1 year, you've got to have it every year. Again, it's about that consistency. I'm never a fan of tweaking the rules year upon year. This person here says, I can't believe people want to scrap the juries. And somebody else said, fans always want to complain when the end product doesn't go their way. That's going to continue for the end of time. But I do think the juries ought to stay. I really do. Retire the United by Music slogan. We've only had it for 2 years. I don't really know why they want to keep that slogan every year moving forwards. I don't really see the point of that. And this year it definitely didn't feel as though people were united by music. So next year I honestly would change it, but I don't think it's going to be changed. It's hard to say who is the most responsible for this year's mess. Israel, the EBU, the fandom, Martin Österdahl. Martin Österdahl has received a huge amount of flack, and I think some of it is unjustified. There's obviously a lot of committee members, the reference group, as they're called, made up of high-profile individuals from loads of different countries. Maybe they are more to blame than Martin Österdahl, who's just sort of the guy at the top of the table. I don't know. I've not been involved in those conversations, of course. The artists, the delegations, the sponsors, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and talk about politics again, but it does seem as though that Israeli delegation were causing a lot of trouble backstage. So if that had been me, if I had been Martin Österdahl or somebody else high up behind the scenes, it's very difficult because the contest is right there upon you. And you need to rectify these issues as quickly as possible and in a way that's going to satisfy as many people as possible. With the Israeli delegation, it really seems as though nothing was done. And that might be because the EBU or whoever it was trying to push it under the carpet and deal with it after the contest, when it should have been dealt with at the time. If it had been me, I would have booted out that delegation. Or everybody who's been accused. I would have looked at the facts that were presented to me. I would have had dialogue with the artists, other delegations, and then I would have sat down with the culprits and worked out exactly what the situation was, and I would have booted them out, if indeed they were found guilty, I suppose. But again, it's very difficult because it's at a time when so much else is happening. You've got countries threatening to withdraw, and that happened right before one of the shows. How was that rectified? What was said to keep those countries in? I really don't know. I really don't know. The fandom, well, we all know the fandom can be quite toxic, but I think this year, I don't know, at first it felt like pockets of the fandom were being, I suppose, for want of a better word, quite toxic, very forceful in terms of their opinions. You must boycott, you must not give the EBU your money. That boycott ended up being a load of shite. I saw nobody boycott this year's event, not really. But the fandom is the fandom, you know. I don't think the artists were necessarily to blame, they were just there to do a job. The delegations, I don't really know, but you make good points here. There's so much that we don't know, and we will never know. I haven't even spoken about the Dutch disqualification. That was another huge thing overshadowing this year's event, coming into the final, the day before the final. Just absolute chaos everywhere you looked. And as a Eurovision fan, sitting here in my bedroom here in England, it was one bad thing after another. It just felt as though the contest was falling apart at the seams. Will we see some countries withdraw, either out of protest or financial difficulties? I don't think we'll get any countries withdraw because of protest, but maybe financial difficulties. And I touch on Israel again. They're going to be back next year. So does that mean the same thing's going to happen again next year? This whole cycle just begins again. I don't really know. I don't really know. It feels like you can't please everybody in this situation. What else have we got here? They should consider how the contest is affected by countries having... The contest is affected by having countries in active conflict taking part, considering it affects everything from safety issues to peer pressure on participating contestants and delegations. More importantly, they need to really listen to the feedback of participating delegations and do a massive rehaul with independent advisors on how to ensure the safety and well-being of the contestants, with particular focus on mental health. The code of conduct should be revised with strict and consequential consequences to the delegations that break it. I think they should return to a split jury and televote in the semi-finals, as the current situation seems to favour jury favourites whose main competition might not even make it to the final. And the running order, which you say should perhaps be live streamed so we could hear the producers' conversation, and that conversation should be made publicly available. That's a very interesting point. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I'll be totally honest with you. I think it's a case of, before the grand final, they have the qualifiers for semi-final 1, and they probably already know where those countries are going to be in the running order, because we know if they're in the first or second half, or of course we now know the producer's choice. Scrap that. I don't really know why that was introduced in the first place. That was just an extra addition that just wasn't really necessary. Did it add anything to the show? Did it really make the show feel a bit more dynamic and interesting? Not really. They stuck Ukraine on second. I don't know. Anyway, that's an interesting point, a very interesting point, and I've not seen anybody else say about the running order for the grand final and how maybe that should be presented in a different manner. I just don't think that's going to change, though. Clear rules between sponsorship and the EBU. Clear rules that the EBU must apply to the broadcaster, better mental health and media protection for the artist, better vetting for the online vote. The online vote can absolutely be manipulated. The rest of the world vote, is that super necessary? I don't know. Banning or limiting campaign ads on social media, and a couple of other points there as well. All decent opinions, absolutely. Anti-booing technology, that should be removed. I've seen a few things about that in recent weeks, since the contest finished this year. And remember in 2015, some of that crowd noise was so obviously fake, and not just when Russia were performing. Throughout the show, it sounded so fake, and I really didn't like that one bit. And we haven't really had it since, until perhaps this year. I'm not really a fan of it. I'm really not. I don't really see the point of anti-booing technology at all. You also suggest less power to the juries and more power to the public, and more dialogue between the EBU and TV broadcasters. Define the rules, make them crystal clear. I think the EBU are very lenient with their own rules, especially when it comes to sort of lyrical content that might come from somewhere else years ago, or the melody sounding something that we've had before. You know, it seems as though every year we get one or two countries who have to run things by the EBU to make sure their song is okay to go forwards in the competition, and they always get away with it. You know, they always get away with it. I mean, take a look at Finland this year. All Windows 95 man had to do was blur his top a bit, and got away with it. Now, he was obviously going to get away with doing something like that, I suppose, but do you see what I mean about it being ever so slightly lenient, you know? Anyway, I'm rambling now. What else does it say here? Don't give full rein to the journalists and media. One thing I will say about the media, it seems to me that there are so many people, and this is not a criticism, I just don't really understand how it works. There seems to be so many people in the press centre at Eurovision, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, you're not actually a journalist. And there seems to be so many fans, and I'm thinking, well, you're not journalists either. You might have a channel that is similar in size to mine. How have you ended up there? Now, it's not jealousy, far from it, but I'm thinking to myself, what are you adding to the conversation that somebody else isn't already doing? Now, I get fans being in the press centre, really do. Watch the content, lovely stuff. But there are so many fans. That's what it felt like this year, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, what is your role in the press centre? Is it to provide opinions on the rehearsals? Because the professional journalists are doing that. I just don't really understand it. I might sound like a bit of an idiot here, but I just don't understand it. It's why I've perhaps never gone for accreditation myself, because I don't really know what I could report on that is different from what a professional is reporting on. I don't really know, but it seems as though more and more sort of Eurovision fans who have YouTube channels and blogs and what have you, they're getting these cushy slots every year. I don't know what that's all about. I'm not against it, I just don't really understand how that's more and more of a thing. Anyway, somebody else here says, better EBU decision making in a nutshell. 20 possible votes from one phone number is ridiculous. Yes. There needs to be a limit of how many votes you can allocate to a country out of 20, like 5 maximum, so that we don't have these consistently landslide scores to the top and everybody else getting crumbs. I mean, voting, if you vote a lot, that all adds up. It's not exactly cheap, if you ask me. And then somebody else says, get rid of countries from outside Europe, it is Eurovision after all. Interesting point. I have to say, though, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So this ended up being a ramble for the ages. I knew it was going to be a bit of a messy video, but feel free to let me know your thoughts, and you can take a look at those comments on the community post if you so wish. Of course, they are still there. And feel free to leave comments on this video. Let me know what you would change regarding Eurovision moving forwards. Big changes, minor changes, whatever it is, do let me know. And I'll be back with another Eurovision related video at some point in the near future. Thanks again so much for 1,000 subscribers. If you have any ideas on a special video to mark that milestone, again, leave a comment or get in touch with me elsewhere, and I will take your thoughts into consideration. Anyway, hopefully the quality wasn't too bad. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and bye for now.